I stood in the middle of the grand foyer, my heels clicking against the marble floor I once tiptoed across as a little girl. The chandelier above me glittered like a crown, throwing shards of light across the room. My room now. The house smelled faintly of my mother's old perfume, roses and vanilla, a ghost of the woman who used to host charity brunches here. I smoothed the sleeve of my silk blouse, a nervous habit I hadn't shaken, and glanced at the folder on the mahogany table. Inside were the final transfer papers. It was done. The mansion was mine. My phone buzzed, the sound echoing through the empty halls. A text from my father. "We need to talk. Urgent." I almost laughed. Urgent, like when they sold my property behind my back and told me it was for the family. Urgent, like when I was told I was ungrateful for wanting what was mine. I walked toward the massive window overlooking the front lawn, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. The past was knocking at my door, and this time, I wasn't the girl who begged them to listen. I was the woman who bought their silence and their house. I took a deep breath, straightened my spine, and whispered to myself, "Let them come." I still remember the day it all shattered. It was a Tuesday, sunny, deceptively calm, when I found out. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the diner, my hair still smelling like burnt coffee and French fries, when I overheard my aunt on the phone. She said it so casually, like it was neighborhood gossip. "Oh, yes, they sold that land last week. Good price, too." My heart stopped. I ran the 3 blocks to my parents' house, my sneakers pounding the pavement, my chest tight. By the time I barged through the front door, my voice was already cracking. "You sold it?" I demanded. My father didn't even look up from his recliner. "It was wasted sitting there, Emily. We needed the money." I felt the words like a slap. My property, the one Grandma had left me before she passed, gone. Just like that. Needed the money? I repeated, my voice shaking. That was supposed to be my future, my start. My mother tried to soothe me, her tone soft but patronizing. "Sweetheart, you'll understand one day. Family comes first. We did what was best for everyone." No one asked what was best for me. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "You didn't just sell land. You sold my trust." The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. That night, I packed my duffel bag. Before I left, I took the one thing that mattered, the small brass key Grandma had given me on my 18th birthday. She had pressed it into my palm and whispered, "Build something they can never take from you." I walked out without saying goodbye. My hands were trembling, but my steps were steady. Outside, the night air felt sharp against my skin, but there was fire in my chest. I didn't know how I'd do it, where I'd live, or who I'd become. But one thing was certain, I would never again give anyone the power to decide my life for me. That was the night Emily Carter stopped being the obedient daughter. And the night she became someone else entirely. Starting over wasn't glamorous, it was survival. The first few weeks were brutal. I rented a room in a crumbling apartment with peeling paint and neighbors who yelled through thin walls. My bed was a thrift store mattress on the floor, my wardrobe a pile of secondhand clothes stacked in the corner. Most nights, I ate instant noodles and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake walking out. But then I would feel Grandma's brass key in my pocket, its weight reminding me why I left. I picked up extra shifts at the diner, working until my feet were blistered and my back ached. Every tip went into a coffee tin I kept hidden under the bed. When I wasn't working, I was studying online classes at first, then a community college program. Business management. It felt impossible some days, like trying to swim against a riptide. Then I met Monica. She was one of the regulars at the diner, always sitting in booth 7 with her laptop. One night, she asked why I looked so tired. I told her, not everything, but enough. She smiled, slid her card across the table, and said, "Call me. You're too smart to stay here forever." Monica became my mentor. She taught me how to write a business plan, pitch investors, and negotiate without flinching. Under her guidance, I launched my first small venture, a custom event planning business. My first client was a local bridal shower. I worked night and day to make it perfect, and when the bride hugged me with tears in her eyes, I knew I'd found my path. The business grew. Slowly at first, birthdays, office parties, baby showers, then faster. I learned to network, to brand myself, to reinvest every dollar back into growth. There were setbacks too, clients who didn't pay, vendors who bailed, events that went wrong despite my best planning. There were nights I cried so hard my chest hurt. But I never quit. Within 3 years, I had enough saved to move into my own small apartment. No more shared kitchen, no more secondhand mattress. For the first time, I had a door that locked behind me and a space that was mine alone. And yet, I kept my success quiet. When my parents called, I kept the conversation short. When they asked how I was doing, I simply said, "I'm fine." I never mentioned the business, the apartment, or the growing list of clients who trusted me. Let them think I was still struggling. Let them think I was the foolish girl who walked out with nothing. Because one day I promised myself I'd show them everything. Not to beg for approval, but to prove I didn't need it. The day they showed up, the house was quiet, too quiet. I had been standing in the study, staring at the walls lined with books and framed photographs I'd carefully chosen. The sun filtered through the tall windows, casting golden stripes across the Persian rug. This room used to smell like my father's cigars. Now it smelled of sandalwood candles and fresh peonies. My space. My rules. The doorbell rang. I didn't rush to answer. I let them wait just long enough for the silence to stretch. Then I walked to the front door, heels clicking against marble, every step deliberate. When I opened it, my parents stood there. My father looked older than I remembered, lines etched deeper into his face. My mother clutched her handbag like it was a lifeline. For a moment, they just stared past me, taking in the grand entryway, the chandelier, the sweeping staircase, the polished floors. "Emily," my mother breathed, her voice small. "Come in," I said simply, stepping aside. They walked in like guests in a museum, their eyes darting around, cataloging every detail. I watched them take in the changes, the artwork on the walls, the curated furniture, the sense of elegance that was distinctly mine. My father cleared his throat. "We didn't know you were here." "I'm not just here," I said, my tone calm, almost casual. "I own this house." The words landed like a stone dropped in water, rippling through the air. My mother blinked rapidly. "You bought it?" I nodded, a faint smile tugging at my lips. "With my own money. Every penny." They were silent. My father's jaw tightened, his pride warring with disbelief. I could see the calculations behind his eyes. How did she afford this? When did this happen? How did we miss it? I let the silence hang, savoring the moment. "You sold my property," I said softly, stepping closer. "You told me it was for the good of the family." I walked away that night with nothing but a key and a promise to myself. And now, I gestured around the mansion. Now I have everything I built on my own. My mother's eyes glistened. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like she couldn't find the right words. "This place was supposed to be ours forever," my father muttered, finally breaking the silence. "It still can be," I replied, my voice firm but not unkind. "But not on the terms it used to be." They both looked at me, waiting. I stood taller, feeling the weight of all those years, all that hurt, and all that hard-won strength. "This house isn't just brick and stone to me," I said quietly. "It's proof that I survived losing everything you took from me. That I didn't just survive, I rose." The air in the room shifted. My father looked down, my mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I let them stand there, surrounded by the evidence of my success, the art, the books, the carefully chosen pieces that told my story. I wanted them to see it all before I spoke again. "Now," I said finally, my voice calm but unshakable, "we talk about what comes next." I led them into the sitting room, the same one where, years ago, I had once stood begging them not to sell my land. Back then, my voice had been shaky, desperate. Now it was steady. "Sit," I said gently. They obeyed, without protest. My father sat stiffly, hands clasped, while my mother perched on the edge of the couch, her handbag still clutched in her lap. "I need you both to understand something," I began, standing in front of them. "This house is not a trophy. It's a boundary. It's proof that I will never again let anyone decide my future for me." My father opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish. I am willing to let you stay involved in my life," I said, my voice softer now. "But only under certain conditions." They both looked at me, wary but listening. "First," I said, "there are no more secrets. No more decisions about my life made without me. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be honest. Completely." My mother nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Second," I continued, "I need an apology. Not for the money. I earned back more than I ever lost. But for the betrayal. For dismissing me like I didn't matter. I need to hear you say you were wrong." My father's face hardened for a moment. Then, with visible effort, he nodded once. "Third," I said, "we do the work to be better. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. We stop repeating the same cycles. And we respect each other's boundaries." The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the mantel clock. My conditions hung in the air like a verdict. "You're serious," my father said finally. I met his gaze. Dead serious. He looked down at his hands, and for the first time, I saw not just the man who had hurt me, but the man who might actually regret it. "This is your house," he said quietly. "Your rules." My mother reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We should have trusted you. We should have believed in you." The apology cracked something open in me, not pain, but release. I exhaled slowly and sat across from them. "Then we start over," I said softly. Weeks passed, and the tension that once filled the mansion softened into something unfamiliar. Understanding. My parents began keeping their promises, slowly shedding old habits that had caused so much hurt. My mother joined me for therapy sessions, her pride carefully tucked behind a tentative smile. My father, once impatient and dismissive, asked questions instead of giving orders, listening when I spoke rather than dictating. The house, once a symbol of betrayal, became a sanctuary of our new beginnings. I still walked through its grand hallways alone sometimes, touching the polished banister, inhaling the faint scent of sandalwood and roses, letting it remind me how far I had come. One evening, I sat in the study and placed Grandma's brass key on the mantelpiece. The metal was warm under my fingertips, familiar and grounding. I remembered her words. "Build something they can never take from you." I smiled. I had. Not just the mansion, not just the business I had built from scratch, but my self-respect, my independence, my boundaries. Those were treasures no one could ever sell, no one could ever take away. Looking out at the garden she once loved tending, I felt a quiet pride settle in my chest. The pain of betrayal, the nights of struggle, the loneliness, they had all led me here. And now, surrounded by the life I had fought for, I could finally exhale. I thought of my parents, flawed, human, capable of change, and realized I didn't need to punish them to feel victorious. Compassion could exist alongside strength. Respect and forgiveness could coexist with boundaries. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze catching the sunlight glinting off the chandelier above. The mansion was mine, yes, but it was more than that. It was proof of who I had become, of every challenge I had faced, of every moment I had refused to give up. And in that quiet, golden afternoon, I whispered to myself, a final affirmation for the journey that had brought me here. They sold my future once. Now I own every wall that tried to shut me out, and I'm never giving it back. It wasn't just the mansion I owned. It was my life, my voice, my power, and that was something no one could ever take.